Welcome to the Neighborhood Church Revive podcast. We are so glad that you're joining us today as we unpack big ideas about God's Word together. My name is Sean Thomas. I'm the worship pastor here at Neighborhood Church, and we believe that God's Word is relevant and helpful even for today, which is why we take the time to meet together and talk about Sunday service, talk about the sermon series that we're in, talk about any injuries that may have been sustained, any blood that may have been spilt, even if insignificant, but the reason why I mentioned that, yeah, we'll get into that. But the followers here, you guys watching or listening, especially if you're watching, you probably noticed a difference. We are Zooming today because I am joined by Pastor Lee Jones, hailing out. Good to see you, Lee. Also, Pastor Justin McElderry.
How are you, Sean?
Good to have both of you gentlemen here. So, like I said, we are zooming in because, Lee, where are you residing? We can kind of see on your shirt, but...
Oh, I work at Mount Sac, which is in Walnut, which no one knows where that is, frankly.
Yeah.
Pomona. If you think of where Pomona is, we're one city over.
Okay, I thought it was further. I thought it was closer to Marietta, but I guess not.
No, but I do live in Ontario.
Oh, wow. So you're...
Yeah, so I commute.
The far reaches of Orange County, well, LA and Orange County, or Riverside County, I guess.
Yeah, I live my life in like 3 or 4 different counties.
Well,
wow.
And grew up, or I don't know if you grew up, but I know originally from Taiwan. Is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in Taiwan, actually.
Yeah.
So real quick on that, I'm sure it's come up in a sermon somewhere, but my dad was in the Air Force. And on one of his medical leaves, he had cancer, I think it was. Anyway, when he was on leave, he went to Taiwan, was actually called Formosa at the time, and he went there and met my mom. And then he started taking all of his leaves to go back to the island, and eventually convinced her to marry him.
Wow.
And so flew out there, got married, brought her back to the United States. And a couple of years later, decided to retire. I was born, and then he retired shortly thereafter.
Whoa.
But government work doesn't pay great, right? Especially when you're in the military. So my mom convinced them to say, hey, you can probably live pretty well on your pension. So they moved to Taiwan, where that was all of my childhood memory. When I turned 18, my dad, I had said, hey, I want to join the military like you. And he said, no, you're going to go get a college education. I said, okay, well, maybe I'll settle down and marry a girl from Taiwan like you did. And he said, no, you're going back to the States. So I got an academic scholarship.
Yeah.
I got an offer from Azusa Pacific as well as Biola. And I did not know anything.
Yeah.
And Biola had the full ride. So I took that offer. That's it.
That's a good one.
That was my entire decision-making process as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's free? Okay.
Yeah.
And I've been in California ever since.
Yeah.
So glad you did, because that's kind of how we all connected initially, right?
Yeah.
It was over Talbot internships and whatnot. So
yeah, that's it. Justin is somebody that I interned under when I was going through Talbot. So, and that's how I got connected here.
Yeah.
What a great story. I feel like we don't hear that enough. I'm gonna make this fit into our podcast today. But Justin, can you briefly just tell us, not the farthest reaches, but didn't grow up in Southern California, but kind of found your way to Neighborhood Church?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I grew up in Seattle, the #1 seed in the NFC.
We'll spill that.
Your Seattle Seahawks, my Seattle Seahawks, anyways. So it's happy times. It's been a good year with baseball and football. Anyways, it's not always, but yeah, I grew up there. Felt the Lord calling me to ministry, and so at that point, I kind of put as much research into it as Lee, where I was looking for a college, and my pastor's daughter and a friend of mine, who was a friend of hers, they were going to a small school in San Diego called Christian Heritage College at the time. And so I'm like, well, if it's good enough for the pastor's daughter, I guess I can go there. That was the amount of my research, Lee. So I went there. That's where I met my wife. And then, which is not the pastor's daughter, but just... I met Suzanne there, and then wanted to continue my education. Then I ended up at Talbot, and that's where I did my seminary studies. And when we were attending churches, we looked at a few churches in the area, and with it was Cypress Evangelical Free Church at the time, is what neighborhood
Mhm.
church was.
Yeah.
And it was cool because the first Sunday we visited is when one of the senior pastor at the time said he was leaving. So I'm like, I always wondered if it was me, but I never met him. I was just a face in the crowd. But then so we thought, okay, well, we're not going here. But we came back a few months later after we had done some visits because we did like it.
Yeah.
And we thought, wow, they were a church without a lead pastor and they were flourishing as a body, and just thought, then what a great place this must be. And so we stuck out, and then they eventually,
Mm.
I wore them down and they gave me a job and haven't been able to get rid of me since. So
I tell you what, the way this all inter intersects with our podcast today is that you guys are devoted to your jobs. You've been devoted to not only the call, even if kind of a loose decision, to go on to Biola, to Talbot, and then to where you are now. You are devoted to being a pastor at now Neighborhood Church, and that just so happens to be our sermon series topic. And to set the table, Justin, do you mind just giving our listeners, who I think are quite interested in kind of our backstories and everything like that, but more so interested in kind of what God is doing at Neighborhood Church and how we ought to respond to that. So I'd love to hear kind of what is this sermon series, and what is the through line, because I kind of find it fascinating, the different series that we've done for the past couple of series, and how I see a through line that's really interesting. So just can you prep us with that?
yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, it's a joy, but it's a challenge to put together the different series and try to realize we're trying to communicate to people from all different places in their lives and different things, and we all need different things, and thankfully the Holy Spirit works that out week to week. But over the kind of arc of what we plan over the last several months is last summer, we usually try to hit wisdom literature in the summer because it's less context is needed, and you can, people are in and out more, and so we have often done Psalms. But last summer we did Proverbs, and Proverbs has kind of a like, hey, do
Yeah,
this, don't do that,
yeah,
and which is very important and very needed. And then we went to James, and James is kind of the Proverbs of the New Testament, where it's very,
yeah.
hey, do this, don't do that. And so we want to, each week, we want to make sure we tie that to the gospel, and that we do these things because of what God has done for us, not a legalism kind of thing. But when you've hit it for 3 or 4 months, we kind of want to take a step back and make sure we're really clear on that. And so we then stepped into the Reverence series, where it was really just kind of these God exalting passages
Yeah.
that helped us remember why we do what we do. Then we moved into Christmas, and now we're moving into this new series in the new year, and kind of understand, okay, what is this? We see how great God is. We're trying to go deeper and wider, is kind of our theme for this year, deeper in our understanding of God, our relationship with
We're having a little technical
around
difficulty
us.
with Justin, so
Oh,
we'll
okay.
edit as you've just frozen a few times, but
Oh, okay.
um,
I mean, maybe that's fine, that I should zip it. I don't know. So,
it's all good
do you want me to
content.
keep going, or?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we
Okay.
got the deeper and wider
Okay.
of that,
Okay.
yeah,
So now we're trying to kind of bring that all together, of the deeper and wider, of what does that look like? What does a life that is committed to being deeper and wider, a devoted life, look like? And so this series is called Devoted, and it really, the way I've framed it is the table of contents of that series is from Acts 2:42 to 47, when it
yeah,
talks about all the things the early church was devoted to. And so a lot of that is, hey, do this, commit yourself to this. And so I wanted to make sure on this first week we really uh, kind of set a baseline of, we do all of this that's to
mm,
follow for the next few months because of who Jesus is and what he's done for us. So,
yeah, yeah. No, and that's really good, and I just like, yeah, we did we heard a moment ago, coming from the summer and the fall, of kind of like wisdom, a little more black and white in terms of like, do this, don't do this. These are kind of like the practical ways to live that you ought live, and then reverence really kind of slowing down, and the why, and maybe a little more feeling, or well, maybe just a little more esoteric, um and then now of devotion. When we have Mike McKay on, he has in the future weeks on our podcast, he has some really he's really passionate about, you know, kind of defining devotion in kind of in a biblical way, rather than like a badge of like, look at how cool I am, or to go to the guy, your guy's sports analogies, you know, I'm going to paint this letter on my chest, or a big S, you know, for Seahawks or whatever it is. Not that I'm knocking that, Justin, if you know.
Say, is that a bad thing?
Yeah, yeah. Come February, for, you know, the first week in February, if there's some good news, we might see that on the podcast. But Lee, could you define devotion for us? I think most of us and those listening uh, know what devotion means, or what it means to be devoted, and it is in some sense, you know, like if I'm devoted to a sports team, like that is a sign of devotion, that I'm going to go to every game. I'm going to get all the memorabilia and the t-shirts and the mugs and the lanyards and everything like that. But can you just give us something to kind of hang our hats on as we start the series?
So I'm gonna give you basically what I. In fact, I'm just gonna cheat and go straight to the sermon.
Oh yeah.
Part of what I did was sort of like give an idea of what I thought devotion is. So dictionary
Yeah.
dictionary S definition would be like a strong love, loyalty, and dedication to like
Mm,
a person, cause, or thing or activity,
yeah.
or belief, right? And so that's kind of like a dictionary definition thing. The illustration I used, of course, was sports related, but essentially, I think of devotion as something you tend to focus on. Now, maybe deliberately, maybe consciously, maybe not,
Mm,
but it ends up forming, if it really defines who you are, if that is your identity, then frankly, that's who you're devoted to. And
mm,
less less preachy, but I feel like as humans, we were all created to worship something.
mm,
So we either have an idol in our lives or we have God in our lives.
mm,
And therefore, our fandom is sort of like an echo of those things. Like,
mm.
I'm a 49ers and a Chiefs fan. Not great, not great on one hand, not bad on the other, you know? So it's like, you know, um, but my devotion to these football teams is weak because I'm a fan, because my wife is a fan. So, and we know people
Oh,
who are churchgoers because their spouses are churchgoers, right?
yeah.
So how devoted
That's
can you really be when it's not yours? But when you
mm,
identify with it,
mm,
then you can actually be devoted. And people know you as a 49ers fan, Steelers fan. And that's not a, again, not a bad thing, right?
yeah.
Seahawks fan. That can be good. But hopefully that devotion, that focus in our lives on Jesus, people know that we're Christians.
Yeah.
And that as Christians, for example, I work at a community college,
Mm,
and a California community college. It's a public institution. People know I'm a Christian. Now, honestly, there have been times when like, oh, you're a Christian, and there's a lot of like, oh, can I really trust this guy to not be super judgy or
mm,
conservative? That's like
yeah.
gonna like really, and but they get to know me and go, okay, yeah, he's a Christian, but I get to know him, and it doesn't get in the way of my ability to work with them or to witness to them or to
Yeah.
serve them, frankly. Anyway, so devotion, in a word,
Yeah.
right? Where we focus, where we sort of follow, and what we, if you will, small small W worship, but it's our identity.
Yeah.
So, but dictionary definition, it's a strong love or loyalty to, and that was probably
Yeah.
you're gonna have to edit that down. I am very wordy, so
Yeah,
back
the
to you.
last 3 minutes we're gonna, yeah. No, I think that's all good stuff, and I like how you mentioned the dedication, or even you mentioned relationships. I As we develop, Justin and I, well, on the worship team in general, really connect with Justin and Pastor Mike in preparation for sermon series to generate the imagery. And as I was considering devotion, I thought of tying the knot. You know, speaking of marriage, like that's a kind of a a visual, you know, kind of play on words, and so the the sermon series graphics are like yarn, like knitted in, because I do think there's some permanent to be really devoted. Because I think, Lee, you also bring up something interesting, and Justin, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You know, I can be they call it a bandwagon, and for sports, like I could jump on, gosh, well, the Seahawks, right? So I'm in a fun way going to be vicariously following the Seahawks now because Justin, is going to give me updates pretty constantly, which is
Yeah.
par for course. Like that's even though they have Super Bowl aspirations this year, that's every year, regardless.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be much more invested because Justin's more invested now. But I'm not going to buy the memorabilia. I may or may not watch the game, depending on if the Chargers are in it, which I don't think that'll happen, but we'll see. We'll see. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, just that's interesting that devotion can be a subconscious thing, but then what's the depth of your devotion, or is it a knot, or is it a sticker? I kind of used an illustration this
Right.
Sunday at church, just kind of on the worship end of things. That if I'm a Boy Scout, I don't put a sticker as my campfire building Boy Scout patch that would fall off. I sew in my patch because I'm dedicated to learning how to build a campfire. And so I sew it in, it's permanent. So yeah, Justin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of devotion and what it means if we're really devoted or not, or vicariously devoted, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think we said of, that someone attends church because their spouse does. And,
Yeah.
and I think there's um, I mean, I think the Bible's clear, like where Jesus says, take up your cross, that's not a casual thing, cross and follow me. So there is a call to devotion really as um, not a prerequisite in the sense of earning our salvation, but an understanding of that real faith is devotion, not a casual thing. And I think we see that also with, I guess in the most extreme version of Judas, who was
Yeah.
had all appearances of being devoted, but didn't. But then there's others where I think it's in John 6 where Jesus didn't fulfill people's expectations. He taught about, his body and the blood, and people are like, we're out of here. And,
Yeah.
so there's this
That's a
kind
good.
of fair weather fan type Christianity as well. And, Jesus says he just lets him go, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a there's a definite distinction scripturally, and I think it's important for us to wrestle with. And this is something that's come with age. I think when I was younger, man, there was not much more important than Seattle sports. That was I was obsessed with it, and some people still think I am, but it really doesn't ruin my day now. Like I'm
Yeah.
like if it when it's over, I'm like, oh, that's a bummer, and
Yeah.
that's it. I move on.
Yeah.
So what I tell people now is when your team's good, there's nothing better, and when they lose, it's a reminder that there's more important things. And I think
Oh,
that's
that's good. Yeah.
with when we talk about our faith um, that's the thing we want to be the most important thing, and everything then falls in order after that. And I think we get really twisted and idolatrous and even just wasteful of what God gives us when we get our priorities, our affections, our
Mm.
devotion out of order. That we can give it to some things that would just be dumb. I mean, for me to stand before God and saying, "Wasn't I a great Jesus fan?" That's or wasn't I a great Seahawks fan? That
Mm.
would be absurdity.
Mm.
But sometimes we live like that on this side. Then there might be other things that are maybe more noble, but still short of Jesus. And we want that to be our ultimate devotion. I think I'm going all over the place. That it's a very simple question you've asked, but neither Lee nor I have been able to do it concisely. So I think
But and I think it is. I think that's fine because I think there is nuance to it because I don't want for our listeners to give the feeling like, especially if a loved one is coming to church and you're sensing they're probably just coming to church because I'm asking them to come to
Mhm.
church. That's I don't want to knock that because I
Exactly.
think that's a wonderful invitation and shows um, uh, evidence of love and care, and that relationship in and of itself, that even if the other person's kind of like, all right, I'll go because you want me to go, uh, that's a positive starting point, because after time, like some people need a little more time to
Exposure.
get to
Yeah.
church, right? And again, getting to church isn't the thing, because it's the devotion to Jesus. Justin, I in your message, I wrote down a quote that I'm going to not steal, because I'm telling everybody now on the podcast ahead of time. But You said, when we see Jesus for who he is, or who he truly is, devotion makes sense. It's the only thing that makes sense. And so sometimes it takes people to warm up to Jesus, or to get to the idea of, yeah, he needs to be the Lord of my life. Um, and for some people that's a process, and what better place than, hey, they're joining me for church, even
Mhm.
though it's kind of begrudgingly, but someday maybe it's, oh, this is clicking and making sense.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's very important too. That we're all in process, like that. We don't, when my kids are interested in X, Y, or Z, I don't flog them saying, "Hey, make sure you know Jesus is most important." It's a growth and a transformation of affections, and
Yeah.
God's been patient with us. It's His kindness that leads to repentance, right? So
Mm.
Yep.
I'm glad
Hey,
you brought
that's
that in
fun.
because I definitely wouldn't want people leaving with that.
Yeah.
That's really important. We're all in a process, and
Yeah. It's interesting because in preparation for this, so I was trying to understand the assignment, and Justin's like, we want to talk about how Jesus is worthy. And I was originally focused on being devoted. I'm like, okay, well, take up your cross. And I was kind of going very heavily down like a discipleship route. But then I realized there was New Year's, Lord willing, people coming to church for the first time. I'm like, oh, maybe I should really focus on Jesus being worthy and just going. The rest of it will follow. So you're in
Mm.
church, fantastic.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
where God wants you. I don't care how
yeah,
you got here,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
God's doing whatever He's doing. So yeah, please come in. Like,
Yeah.
look, I haven't probably watched football, and this will tell you I'm not really a fan. Couple months, like I'm seeing some scores, but I haven't watched the games. But whenever my wife's interested, I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, that said, when she's like really into it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can recite plays and stuff like that. And hey, if if you're in church because of someone else, fantastic. Like Sean was saying, but I think God will get to you. I hope God will get to you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. No, and that's, yeah, like that investment, for lack of a better word, doesn't return void. We have to make a decision, a leap of faith at some point, in our lives. But that saturation, I guess, maybe is a better word, of being surrounded by God type things. Is church is kind of the uh, I think one of the best ways to experience that. But even in, man, this past year, I've been able to go out to some amazing national parks, and that's like, wow, God, like I can still interact with you here and say, God, you are worthy of praise, and have a devoted experience, I guess, by being outside of the walls of church too. And I wanted to mention too, even for us, for dedicated believers, I make mistakes, I sin, and that doesn't negate my devotion. Obviously something's going on in my life, in my heart, or something's happening here where I have to wrestle with that with God. um, but yeah, our devotion um, doesn't mean that we're perfect all the time. And I think we're
Sure.
hitting on this, and I want to circle around to the blood of the lamb, sort of a thing. Lee, you really hit on, you had a I don't
Yeah,
think I really, I mean, and everybody watching this probably wants to
sure.
hear about your story, so let's get there.
Okay.
But I also want to mention that you had really good, and Justin, thank you for picking Revelation 5, because it's such an amazing uh, early church, I think, just evidence of Jesus, who he is, what happened, his crucifixion. And yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating that it's here in this vision that John has is the lamb who was slain. It wasn't the lion like you were talking about, Lee. It's not this, I mean, there is kind of warrior stuff,
Mm.
in Revelation, but at that moment, it's, as I read it, it's like, oh wow, did the crucifixion just take place, or where are we in time, and how does that work, in Revelation? But it's like, whoa, like this is happening, and yeah, so I'd love to come to the bloody parts.
Not sure how to make that transition.
Yeah,
I would say
yeah.
this.
So you were preaching, and something happened
Yeah.
about the lamb.
Well,
Drop
let me
something.
let me
Yeah.
reflect on something you said earlier, though. As
Yeah.
I'll say, more mature believers, because I'm in my 50s now. Um, One of the things I do appreciate more and more is God's grace,
Yeah.
and like you said, not perfect, right?
Mm.
I sin all the time. That doesn't mean that we all have a license to sin. Read some Paul. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
but I think one of the things that I'm appreciating more and more as I age
Hmm.
is just how amazing God's grace is and how broad his mercy is. And I, the point I'm trying to make there is that, yeah, we're going to do all the devoted things, right? We're going to do all the devoted activities. And yeah, there's going to be, in talking about in thinking about this series and trying to get it kicked off right, I had gone down the discipleship route and also the what's it mean to follow Jesus. And there will be
Yeah.
those who say, Lord, Lord.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
didn't I do all these wonderful things? Wasn't I a great Jesus fan, right? To use
Mm.
Justin's words again. And it won't matter because it's that relationship. And
Yeah.
I'm beginning to lean more and more on that relationship, that love that God has for us, and less on doing the right things. But I do think that doing things that please God comes naturally when we are his children.
Mm.
And I'm just going to make a terrible rough transition and just go, and that was like I don't know about Justin, I spend hours obsessing, right? Like I read, I write, I this is like the third draft. And like the draft that ended up on Sunday was nothing like what I sketched out 3 weeks
Yeah.
ago. Like
Okay.
this is not the sermon I wrote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's yeah.
And
Not
so
this
when we
time, but sometimes for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so when we got to Sunday, I showed up Sunday morning. I decided to get some sleep, which means I got like 5 hours of sleep. Like I went to bed early, I could hardly sleep.
Yeah.
Um, Spent that whole time just going, Lord, I've prepped. Please do what you will. And uh, for those of you who have, I'm going to assume if you're watching this or listening to this, you've already been to the service or watched or listened to the service. But the point that Justin and I were trying to make this week is just that Jesus is worthy of our devotion. And then the rest of the series is what does devoted life look like?
Yeah.
And so as we were both going to go into Revelation and the blood of the Lamb, who was slain, um, who is still alive and standing next to the throne of God, being worshipped together with God. Um, I had started, I don't know, I might have been like 5 minutes into the message. I'm not
Wow.
sure, right?
Okay.
And there were these. So, Sean, you were leading worship, and there were a couple, like when there are worship songs that say, like we exalt you or we bow down, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so I found a quiet corner and I kneeled and I raised my hands and I got teary and snotty because I'm moved,
Yeah.
right? So I wipe up a bit, I clean up a bit. I'm like, okay, I gotta go up and talk. So I need to clear my throat and get ready.
Yeah.
So I go up there and I'm still sniffly and I'm like, oh, I gotta get, I gotta get my game face on here, right? I got people to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, I really should have taken some allergy medicine today. And then I don't know, 5 minutes into this, and I'm feeling a little self-conscious, like dabbing what I think is snot.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I'm like, it's red, and I'm like, I haven't watched the video, but my face was probably like, what is this? Like, like somebody who blew their nose or changed somebody's diapers and went, what is this stuff?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. What am I seeing? Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, back to the service, right? I'm just gonna kind of and then it started to really kick in.
Yeah.
Like it started bleeding. I'm just like, okay, I'm sorry, everyone. So I took out the napkin and just went, I'm just going to stuff this in my nose now.
Yeah.
And we just continued. And I was, in that moment, my thinking was just like, how distracting. Like,
Yeah.
why is this happening? But we're just going to continue. So we continued for a bit. I'm not sure how long it was afterwards, right? Because time kind of,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel my, I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, and then like, it's red. And I'm like, are you kidding
The
me?
other side. Yeah.
And Pastor Mike was like ready, thank God.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, we're just gonna do this. I ripped it up, stuck it on my nose. I got audience participation and encouragement. Hey, pinch your nose, you know. And this one lady laughed, and afterwards she came up and she says, "Yeah, my husband does that. He walks around with these plugs in his nose
Yeah.
whenever he
Just
gets a
shoved
plugged
up his
nose."
nose. Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and oh man, the really embarrassing part, and was at one point I'm like, oh, I think it stopped. So I made the stupid decision mid-service of going, I'm just going to take this out so I sound less plugged up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it had not stopped. And I just started like dripping all over. But I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, this is on video.
Yeah.
Okay, this is distracting from the message. It's like, this is good. And then, we continued. So you see this part of the service where I'm doing this thing,
Yeah.
right? Talking. And I'm like, ah. And
Yeah.
this whole time I'm just thinking, God, I said, do what you will. This is not what I had in mind, but hey, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, I did try to lean into it a bit. It's like, look, we talk about a bloody lamb. Here's a sermon illustration. I did not plan for this, but here's an illustration for you, right? That looks pretty messy. And yeah, I couldn't plan that. I wouldn't want to plan that. But
Yeah.
fortunately, our congregation and those who came that day were
Everybody's
they
very
seemed pretty
good.
understanding, and
Yeah. Yeah. No.
they continued to pay attention to I think the message.
Do you get
And
bloody noses regularly, Lee? Or
actually, okay, here's what's crazy. When it's dry, so it's not raining, sure.
yeah.
So I usually know it's coming, right? It's
Yeah.
been nice and rainy. I'm
Yeah.
like,
It was.
okay, great.
Yeah. Ton of moisture
And
in the air.
so, okay, TMI situation. So partway through this, when I'm like second one, and I'm like, oh, this is one of the bad ones. In the middle of service, I'm thinking, I just hope I don't collapse in the middle of service and there's like a medical. I'm just going to continue now, right? So I go home, I take a shower, I do a sinus rinse, and that was it. There was no more, like, I didn't have. So I'm like, okay, so seriously, God, why
Yeah.
in the middle of preaching? Why not before? Why not after?
Yeah.
All right, it's your time. You do with it what you will.
Yeah.
And no, I haven't had a bloody nose since then. So it's like, okay. But yes, but for those of you who are listening, it's the blood of the Lamb who takes away the sins of the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I was not able to work that into the message, but yes, that has never happened to me. And I'm like, I should start Googling like videos of pastors who something goes terribly wrong while they're preaching. I just need to find some just to go, okay, it's not just me. But hey, I haven't done the time yet, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you're forever a legend, at least around these parts with that. Like, that's like, I don't think any of us have seen anything like it. So, and
Awesome.
the fact that you just kept plowing through, like, that was pro work.
Yeah.
So, I think, I can't remember what book it was, but it was a Chuck Swindoll book. And I remember him like talking about how he had to preach when he was sick and he was really weak, hardly had a voice, all that kind of stuff. And he's a good preacher and knows it, everyone does. And he's like, man, I just felt like such a failure that Sunday, but someone came up afterwards and that they needed to see him in weakness, that God really communicated through not his polish, but actually God spoke through his raspiness or weakness. And maybe they were used to his polish and it was, hey, God, so you showed someone really real and really devoted to preaching the word. And maybe it was one of those people who it was their New Year's resolution saying, hey, are these guys for real?
I really hope so.
They saw it.
But thankfully, also at the beginning when we were talking about sports channel, I'm like, look, I'm not the starter, right? I'm not Brock Purdy. I'm not Aaron Rodgers. So if you like it, great. If you don't, come back next week. Right?
Nice.
Well, that is, I mean, there's, gosh, there's something to be said. Again, going to the sports analogies, when you get hit in the mouth, or when someone gets hit in the mouth, like, what do? Do they keep going? Um, do they persevere? What's going to phase them? And that's something, as we lean on Jesus, because of who he is, as we've been saying, that's how we're able to keep going, and when we get hit in the mouth, proverbially, and yeah, and I,
That's philosopher Mike Tyson's great quote of everyone
yeah, everyone
until
has
they
to
get
gain
punched in the
some.
mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, and God is so good, because there's so many analogies in life, and I think God does that intentionally. I always, maybe I talk too much about how the universe is created, well, the world is created with seasons and repetition and pattern, and cycles, and I think that happens in the universe too, as far as we can tell. And so there's so many analogies in life, with sports, with competition, to living, a life devoted to God. I think there's so much evidence of that. And yeah, Leah, I wonder, and don't doubt that there was a supernatural component, possibly. You were,
That's what I assume.
yeah,
Yeah. I
you were
mean,
coming with, an altar call too. A call
yeah.
to receive Christ. And you
And I
know,
typically don't. I mean, this is literally the first time I've written an invitation prayer into a sermon. Like
yeah,
usually it's like, hey, if you're interested, come up, see an elder.
yeah.
And no, that wasn't in the first draft either. So I'm like, all right, yeah, this is what God wants to do. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's gravity, to being devoted, but God will sustain us, and it's a wonderful thing.
that's what
Um,
I think too. As we look to the rest of the series, and I kind of tied it in near the end, but like that Jesus is worthy for us to be devoted to. And then as we look at these then practices that we're devoted to moving forward, that these aren't punishments. They're really a seat at the table.
mm,
They're an opportunity to be nourished by Jesus and his worthiness, and in the word, in communion, in prayer. All of those things are, there's times when they feel like they're a slog, like going to the gym, but overall, it's the life giving nature of it in the long run that is the way that we connect with Him. So,
mm.
and His people.
That's awesome, you guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up for us. Any closing words from
Oh,
either of
wow.
you gentlemen?
That was fast. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I
Well,
think it's gonna be a great series and
yeah.
get there. Whether
Yeah.
online or live. But I think there's a lot of good stuff, and it's gonna be a great few months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the off chance there's somebody that hasn't heard this before, honestly, it's just like we joked about 10 weeks forming a habit, but if you're listening to this or you came to service, come back again.
Mm,
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
you know, I think, how do I put this? I really do want you to see how awesome Jesus is.
Yeah.
And maybe the first time didn't take, but come back and don't just like look at the guy up there preaching, right? Look around at the people who love him. And I'm
Mm,
hoping that what you're saying is, hey, I want some of that.
yeah.
How do I get some of that? And then,
Yeah.
we're here for you. You can join God's family, and it is the best thing.
Yeah.
It will become part of your identity. You will become a Jesus fan, right? You will
Mm,
be, and it'll be awesome.
mm.
So come back. I guess is my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good, good word.
Awesome. Justin, Lee, thank you guys so much for joining us. And also thank you for everybody listening or watching to our podcast. It's wonderful having you guys follow along. As Lee mentioned, please join us live and in person, or you can watch our services on YouTube. You can go to Neighborhood Church of Cypress or Neighborhood Church of Los Alamitos, and you could watch, you could watch last week's exciting services, but also any future service that we we have. You can watch those there. Also, some of the books that we talked about, some of the Bible passages, the scripture verses that we talked about, those are on our website. We do little links in our show notes for the podcast. You can find those at neighborhoodchurch.com/revive for all of our podcasts and past series of the year. And also on our homepage, actually, neighborhoodchurch.com, we have this week's podcast will be posted there as well. And we always love hearing from you guys. If you have any questions or comments that you want to send to us, you can email us at connect@neighborhoodchurch.com. That's CONNECT @neighborhoodchurch.com. Until next time, we pray that God will revive your soul.